Okay, good day and welcome to everybody here for the overview of Aladtec for law enforcement agencies. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Dave Snyder. I am a support specialist here with Aladtec, and I'm joined with one of our system specialists here, Matt Zinno, who's going to be taking you through the system. We're going to start here by just kind of giving you an overview of what today's about, our agenda. It's going to take about 45 minutes. I'm going to give you a brief introduction about Aladtec and walk you through some of what we're all about here. And then Matt's going to take you through the software itself and show you all the different areas of the system, as you can see there through schedules and reports and more. And then I'll be here as a moderator in the background, kind of fielding your questions as we go. You'll see the questions area there in your GoToWebinar control panel. And we hope to get some questions, so please go ahead and I'll field those as they come in. And if deemed necessary, I'll just kind of save some of those questions for the end of the broadcast here for Matt to cover in more detail so we can show you more of a detailed answer of what we can get to. All right, and hopefully along the way, we're going to get you to interact with us a little bit here too. We have a couple of polls that we're going to throw out there, so we hope you can get to participate in those and let us know a little bit about where you're from and what's going on there. But let's start with about who we are. We're Aladtec, of course. We're a cloud-based scheduling and workforce management software platform. We're a system designed to handle the unique staffing habits of law enforcement, such as yourselves, and other public safety agencies. We're based right here in the Midwest, here in River Falls, Wisconsin. We're about 30 minutes east of the Minneapolis-St. Paul Twin Cities area, and we have a nice shot here of our building. And this is where we're housed. We've been in business since 2002. We started as a web-based scheduling system for a small local ambulance service. And since then, we've grown to host more than 2,100 agencies and 135,000 users across the United States and Canada. We do all sorts of size of agencies. Our police, sheriff's departments, and security agency customers, they range from small departments with 15 members or so to a larger urban and suburban agencies with over 160 different members, but we can accommodate all sizes. We do everything in-house. Here's a nice spread of our staff here. We do everything from engineering to configuration to sales and support. And when you call, of course, you get a real person right here in Wisconsin. You can access Aladtec anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, from any device, from a desktop, a tablet, a smartphone, online. It updates instantly, changes are live, so your users will always be able to have the current version of schedules and other content available. There's no extra costs. Everything is included. We provide all your setup, free training, unlimited telephone support as long as you're our customer. And your system can be customized to the unique requirements that you need. We can create the schedules and shifts that you need for all your members. And in terms of rotations and other patterns, we can certainly build custom rotations for you as well and replicate it right here in our schedule as you need. We're going to start here by taking one of those quick polls, if you don't mind. I'm going to throw this out here. We want to learn a little bit about you. Could maybe answer for us, what best describes your agency? Which one of those descriptions there? So if you want to just take a minute and click the choice that closely represents where you're coming from, and we can get an idea of our audience here today. We'll take a minute for that. Another few seconds here. If you can just choose one of those. Wonderful. Okay, let's take a look at the results here. All right, so mostly just straight ahead municipal police departments, terrific. Oh, we have some school and campus in there too. So yeah, we have customers just like that. So we can talk about those details too. Okay, let's get right into the system here. I'm going to turn it over to Matt, and he's going to give you an overview of our features and some of the benefits, and hopefully it'll help you determine whether our system is going to be a good fit for your organization. And don't be afraid to get those questions in using the questions window there in the chat. I'll be fielding those as we go along, and like I said, we'll be answering a bunch of those at the end as well. So take it away, Matt. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Dave. And hello, everyone, again. And I appreciate all who have attended here. And for those who haven't, I would definitely get a recording of the session here for today. But again, my name is Matt Zinnel. I'm a system specialist here with Aladtec. Primarily what I do here is I really just take anybody who's interested in the Aladtec system, learn a little bit more about your department, and am happy to configure a demo that's more specific to your needs and what you do. But for today's purposes, we're going to be looking at the generic system that I've put together. It should give you at least a pretty good idea on how a lot of the features in Aladtec are going to help out someone in the law enforcement do their scheduling and handle any of the specific needs that you have. But with all that said, we'll go ahead and dive right in and get started here. So to access the Aladtec system, again, all you need is a device that has an internet connection, and go to your browser and type in aladtec.com/the name of your department. And so you'll have that custom URL that will bring you right to your login page. So after you've logged in, this is what the desktop version will look like. So this first page here is really customizable. You can add any sort of images on there. If lots of people might put like their badge. You can add any sort of links. You can embed videos for training purposes. Lots of different things you can do to this home screen to really customize that and make that your own. But also on the home page is going to be your dashboard. So off to the right there, you'll see any sort of pending requests that are awaiting approval, any signups, trades, time off. Those are all going to be listed there. And like many areas of the system, this is going to look quite different to an admin than what it would actually look like to just the officer level. So primarily we're going to be looking at what it actually looks like as a scheduler. Under that will be any sort of upcoming shifts. We also do have an information expiration report, so that'll track any sort of expiring licenses or certifications if you choose to track that within our program, and then any upcoming events, trades, or discussions, which we'll go through a lot of those as we're navigating through the system. But again, just a little snapshot of what's happening here today. So the first area we're going to go through in a little bit more detail is the member database. A couple reasons I wanted to start here is a lot of the information that's in this section translates to and hooks into other pieces of the program like the schedule and reports. But you can really track any sort of information you'd like in here, anything from your basic employee type, full-time, part-time, date hired, what your title is, contact information, all the way to those certifications that I mentioned. And those are the ones that are actually going to turn red if they have actually expired, or let you know if they're coming close to expiring. So a number of different things that we can track in here. Again, this page is only going to be accessible to admins, where your standard officers, they really only get to see their own profile page and what relates to them. So starting off, let's take Frankie here, hover over his name and hit edit member. And that's going to take me right into his profile page. So from here, you have your basic information. So first name, last name, login password, date hired. Under that is going to be your access levels. So this is how we determine what that person's allowed to do. So by creating these different access levels and applying people to those groups, that really determines what they can actually access and modify within the system. So we can get pretty creative with those. We also do have a lot of different work groups that are going to define what their rules are. So in terms of trading and signups, but we'll look at that a little bit more later too. We do have the different messaging information. So each person can enter in their mobile phone number, their email address, and their phone provider. So that way, once they set that up, they can receive the notifications from Aladtec, as text and emails are going to be our primary methods of communication. So right under that is where you can define your first type of message choices. So under the My Requests, we have signups, trades, and time off. So based on what you choose there as an individual, that will determine when your request is actually approved or denied, it will send a message back to you and let you know the status of that. So that way you're kept in the loop on all those requests. Off to the right here, we do have different form notifications, but I did want to point out the upcoming shift reminder. This is a really handy tool that it sends you out a message 24 hours before each of your shifts. And that's just going to remind you of when and where you're actually working that next day. So if you do have any part-timers or anyone who's not on a fixed rotation, that can be really beneficial to make sure that they're kept in the loop on all of those. And for anyone who is an actual admin within the system, you'll see this section. This is going to be where each supervisor can actually determine who do I want to get messages from. So we can get pretty specific here too in terms of I only want to receive messages for this particular group of people. That's all going to be defined based on either access level or work group, and we can set up the categories that way also for you. Under that is going to be the different work qualifications. So this is where we can create all the different schedules and positions. That this is really going to be different for every single person. Depending on how you want to create your schedule, how you want it labeled, we can really customize these to your specific needs. And then based on what we've chosen here, regulates how the schedule functions. So who can I trade with? What shifts can I pick up? Or what schedules can I even see in general? So lots of different things that we can do to configure that. We do also have a time off accrual section. So this is where we can create different profiles. This is an optional feature. You do not have to use this one. If you want to just track what they've used and not what they have, then we can leave this one disabled. But if this is a need of yours, we essentially will create these profiles for you that define you'll add this amount of hours into these banks at this frequency. So that'll automatically dump those hours into those banks, and then whenever time off is used within our system, it will automatically deduct from those banks. Really just the main benefit being that you have that information on the front end of a request, where a lot of departments might not know that and just get that information, on a pay stub or something. All right, and then in this bottom section, you can really add or remove any of these fields. This is your section to really customize and make it your own also. So under the Members tab, if we go to the Database Configurator page, that's going to take us over here, and you can really customize this any way that you'd like. It's all going to be drag and drop. It's very easy to do and build. You can do this all yourself. You don't need to call us for this. You can pull in these fields, and then we can relabel those as needed. Now, one of the sections that does have a little more functionality built into it, like I mentioned, is the certifications portion. So we do have these date fields that do expire, and we also do have the option for attachments. So if you want to pull in an attachment field for each of those different licenses, or are you an operator, instructor, things of that nature, you can add those right in there and upload an actual scanned copy of that. But people get pretty creative with these things too. I've even seen one department where whenever they issue a new weapon to somebody, they will actually take a picture of it so you can record the condition that it was when it was distributed. So lots of different things that we can do to customize this portion for you. And then one last item in the database, and then we'll move right on to the calendar. That's going to be the mass messaging feature. So I have about 39 members in my database. If I wanted to send a message to everyone, all I have to do is check this box. That's going to select everybody's name and then hit send message. Now from there, I can do an email and a text, or an email or a text message. And I can either do that to everybody, or I can create specific groups of people based on really any sort of information. For instance, this work group, I can sort that alphabetically, send it just to dispatch, or any subcategory of people in there too. All right, so let's move forward to the actual schedule. So right now what we're looking at is our monthly calendar. And depending on what your preference is, you might like to use something different or build it out a little bit differently. Again, it really depends on where you're coming from. But with that said, I'm going to pause here for one quick moment, and let's take another quick poll. So the question here is, how do you currently manage scheduling at your agency? And these kind of answers will really help me kind of dial into the use case on why one usage of the schedule or one view might be a little more appropriate than the other. But yeah, so anyone who's coming from another scheduling solution, you might be familiar with a lot of these things already, or things that are similar. But we'll leave that open for just another moment here. And we will close that out. So looks pretty good percentage are currently using a different solution. So thank you all for joining and seeing what we have here today. But again, a good portion using spreadsheets, which I would say is the vast majority of where a lot of people are coming from currently. So some of the different options we have, again, are the monthly. And within each of the views that we have, I can click on my edit link here. And especially if we're talking about a large department, you could have upwards of 30 schedules. It's very possible. So coming in here and saying, I just want to view my patrol first shift, I can filter that down. I can hit apply. And then that will shrink down my schedule so it's not so much information to look at, a little bit easier to digest. We also do have a couple other views here for daily options. And the daily blocks view will really give you kind of an hour by hour breakdown for each position schedule. And it's also going to provide any sort of minimum staffing counts. So we can define minimum staffing based on total head count, or if there's certain qualifications within that schedule where I have to make sure at least one person is qualified as XYZ, then we can enter that in too. But as you can see, any sort of like security details and training, we'll be looking at those here shortly. We do also have a daily summary view. A lot of people do refer to this just as your roster for the day. So I know if you're in morning briefing, you might have this right up there so you can kind of see who's there. And then also on the bottom, that's where it would show anybody who's actually on time off or anything like that for the day. And then one of the other popular ones is going to be the weekly view. I do see a lot of departments that are coming from something that looks similar to this. So just in terms of consistency, I know this one is also used quite a bit. But I think for the most part, we're going to focus on the actual monthly view. And I wanted to dive right into one of the scenarios I put together on how Aladtec can actually help you fill a shift if you have a vacancy. So this is usually used in law enforcement more if it's more of a planned overtime or something like that, where it can get quite different if it's that sick call that comes in half an hour before the shift starts. But if we're looking at this day on the 16th, I have Frankie here who is on vacation. And what I'd like to do now at this point, I have this open officer position, and this is the red exclamation point that tells me I'm short on that day. I'm going to click on this find coverage alert. So a little blue envelope on that day. And really all you should have to do is check that box on the top left there and then hit send. That should take you anywhere between 2 to 3 seconds, because what this tool is going to do, it's only going to send this message to people who are actually qualified to work that position. It'll factor all that in. It will exclude anybody who's already working during that time frame, and it will also exclude anybody who's on approved time off. If you do need to override either of those last two, some people do still want the people on vacation to know about it, then you can check those boxes. And then we also do have an edit recipients list here. So if you did need to choose this a little more manually, we do have a couple options where I could target just the part-time group, because they're can be a little less expensive to hire for overtime. So a couple options in that regard. It is also going to be pre-populated. In the bottom right corner here, you'll see that your department's looking for someone to cover the following. This position, schedule, day and time will all be listed. Anything that's highlighted in yellow will be pre-populated. And then there's also going to be a link on the bottom of that email. And that's going to give them, so when they click on it, it'll shoot them right to the system so they can volunteer and sign up for that. And then for the text message, that's what that looks like. So if I got the text, then I would just pull up the mobile site on my phone too. And I can, of course, show you what that mobile site looks like here shortly. So we've sent out that message, and now I have 3 people who signed up for it. So I have Tom, Seth, and John here who have all signed up for that position. Now, again, another area where almost everybody does it a little bit different to a certain degree, but we're going to hop into the hourly editor for that day, as this is really where I can go in and make any of the changes or approvals for that shift. So there's a lot of information in here, and I'd say hands down, as a scheduler, this is the most important screen for you to understand. So for anybody who is doing your approvals based on a first come, first serve, pretty straightforward. I can actually turn off the approval process. So it is basically whoever clicks on it first gets it situation. But if you don't want to do that and have a little more control, you click on the signups. They are all date and time stamped. So you can really see exactly down to the minute when that came in. But for those who have a little bit more variables that can come into play, this calculator is going to come and be very beneficial, as the options for that are right here. This can give you a total number of hours that each person has worked within that week, month, year, year to date, or pay period. And that can just be a grand total of all the hours. I could parse that out and say, I want to see total and just overtime. And then under the member info, that's where you can see all of the different options that are coming from the database. So I can pick up to 7 from these. Let's pull in a date hired here for seniority, and I could even pull in like rank. So we'll hit apply. And this is where you can see, all right, I have my total number of hours, I have my seniority, and then again, hopefully whatever you need, I can pull right into here, but we're gonna go ahead and approve. Let's approve John here. He actually has the least amount of hours. So if I click on that sign up, that's gonna take me right again back to this page. But another component I wanted to add to this, and this applies to all type of scheduled time, is we can add time types. Time types are really just an additional layer of time that you can add to give that report a little bit more information to work on. So some people do parse out their overtime codes, so you can really say, all right, this was overtime due to a sick call, and then hit approve. So when I hit approve, that does a couple of things. It will automatically decline those other 2 signups. Both people do receive a message letting them know that they were approved or denied. And like I said, now you have those hours for John as overtime for sick. And that really, again, gives you those reporting capabilities. So you want to pull a report at the end of Q4 and say, what did we pay out our overtime for? You can gather those numbers based on that. All right, one other item I wanted to show you in the hourly editor is the drag and drop tool. So if you wanted to make any adjustments, we're going to pull John right out of here again. Sorry, John. So if I wanted to take, let's say, Seth, actually, let's move Sue down here. If I wanted to take Seth and actually fill this position, you'll notice when I pick up Seth, it won't let me drop him into that sergeant spot because he's actually not qualified as a sergeant. So that does factor in when you're making these adjustments, but I can take Marcus and I can move him up to first shift. So that drag and drop tool should make it pretty easy as you're going in and making your adjustments for the day. We try to have the schedule pre-built as best as possible based on your rotations. And it can get a little more complex too if you're a department who actually tracks like their zones or their beats or whatever type of assignments you're actually structuring in rather than just an officer position. But it's about 50-50 in terms of people who do that. All right, so let's back out to the main schedule here. And I wanted to take a quick break from the actual admin side of things, and let's look really quick as what it would look like from the officer side of things. So that's a really important area, I believe, because member adoption is something that we've put a lot of focus into, because it doesn't matter how good a product is, if the officers don't use it, then it doesn't matter. So we really have tried to make that part of it very easy for you. We have a lot of great training material where your standard officer can pick up and learn our system anywhere between 10 to 15 minutes. And that's everything that they need to know. So this My Schedule page is really the only area they need to go, as they can see just when they have to work. Now, we do allow them to go to the main calendar if they need to. But if I wanted to put in a time off request, all I do is click on the 21st here, and that'll give me 2 options. I can either request a trade or I can request time off. So let's hit request time off, give you a quick visual on that. You have a date and a time selector, pretty straightforward. Then you choose what type of time you want to use. So this is where you'll actually see those banks of time. So this is telling me, hey, I actually don't have any personal time. This is going to cost me 8. That's going to put me negative. So that's really up to the supervisor if they want to approve or deny that. I'm going to go ahead and put in this request anyways. But from here, if you want to put in a trade, let's click on the 22nd. So we'll hit request trade, and we have 2 different types of trades in Aladtec. That's going to be a giveaway and a swap. A giveaway is more of a one-sided, you're going to work for me on this day, and there's really either no payback required, or it's just undetermined at this point in time. We also do have the swap feature. So a swap actually does require that you offer me a shift back in return prior to it even going up for approval. So it's more of a completed transaction right away. And you can do that for a portion of your shift by selecting that right here. And then under the recipients, this is going to show you a list of everybody who's actually eligible to work that shift. Or let's say I was talking to Seth yesterday. We already worked it out verbally. I'm just going to send it to him. So I can send out that request. That sends him a message. He can respond. And then again, of course, everything does require some sort of supervisor approval. I also was mentioning the different signups. So you can also click on your open shifts here, and that's going to show them. I could even turn off all these other ones just to make it even easier to look at. This is going to show you all the open shifts that are out there for the month. So I have a couple security details that are out there, patrol training on that day. Anything I'm interested in, all I have to do is just click right onto it. I can type in a note, and then I can sign up. Easy as that. All right, so let's go back to the admin side here quickly, and I want to show you how easy it is to actually make approvals for these items. So we already looked at the signups. This is what a time off request would look like. So for Frankie here, I can click on that and I can see all the details. This again will show you the amount of hours. So this is actually going to put him negative. So I'd probably deny this, but for the sake of this example, I'm going to hit approve. That would still remove him and allow him to go negative if I so choose to let him do that. And then I also wanted to show you a trade. All right, let's find a quick trade here. So on the 16th, I have Jill Burns, who's working on my third shift. I'm going to click on that. I can see all the details again of when it was requested, who responded, and then hit, actually that one's expired on me. So let's click on Frankie here, and we'll actually walk through how to accept that. So I had sent that one to Seth, and Seth can go in and click on that. I can hit take shift. Now that one's required approval. All right, there we go. So we'll click on this one for Frankie. Again, I can see those details, and then really all you have to do as the scheduler is you hit approve. That will automatically switch them right in the schedule. So Seth is now scheduled for Frankie on that day. It did send both of them a confirmation message, and now you have that permanent trade record that will show you exactly what has happened or occurring for that day. So aside from those features, like I mentioned, we do also have other options in terms of building details or really any sort of outside jobs that you might need help staffing. So what I can do is, let's say my department has a security detail. We only staff it on the weekends, or maybe it's just a seasonal thing. You can create a temporary schedule that just exists on certain days that you want it to, and then we can have people sign up for it, just like your regular shifts. But really, I think one of the main benefits too is a lot of departments do this in two areas, where having it all in one schedule, you never run into the issue of he's actually working this detail and I didn't realize we were short on this day, where our system will never allow someone to be scheduled in two places at once. And again, you can run reports on just that information for what you're staffing for that detail. All right, I think the last thing I just want to say is there are notes. So if you need to add a note, pretty straightforward. Let's say for the security detail, I can add this note and say, all right, here's the particular location for that event. We can add any sort of instructions that are out there, and then that note will just be tied to that schedule too. So just wanted to point that out. But I'm going to move away from the schedule here. There are a couple other functions I wanted to run through in the system that I think you're going to benefit from. But of course, if I missed something or if there's a scenario I didn't cover, go ahead and send that question over to Dave, or I can address it at the end. Okay, so next is the forms tool. Really customizable and flexible forms tool where you can add any sort of additional fields in here that you want. We can really build it out to what your needs are and match, maybe if it's something you're doing on paper or a PDF currently. Allow them to access this information from their smartphones. You could do it on a tablet, in the terminal in your vehicle, really whatever your choice is there. But again, really easy to build. You can do this all yourself, but of course, we're happy to make suggestions, as we've built hundreds of these, but you can pull those right in. We do have different attachments. We have electronic signatures that you can add into here. So that's really the basic tutorial on how to build it is really just as easy as that. But some of the options I wanted to show you that are very common is if you have like a vehicle check sheet where you want them to fill this out, monthly or weekly. And the cool part about this form is I can have it, if nothing's wrong with the vehicle, it just gets stored and logged and you're done. But if something's wrong with it, let's say if I just check this no box, I can have that automatically kick an email to the person who needs to know that. And they will be aware of it. They can pull it up. We can even give them their own little section on the bottom where they can give it a status. So we can create some nice workflow in there. We do have a timesheet if that's something that you're looking for, where it'll actually automatically populate the records from the schedule into the timesheet for the pay period and have them sign off and verify that if that's something, a requirement that you have. And then I think another big benefit to the forms tool are the reports. So this is where you can pull a report, let's say just on this vehicle 105 here. So I could pull this report and say, all right, show me every single time vehicle 105 went into service in the last 2 years. And I could compile that data in just a matter of seconds with my reports tool. And all of our reports that we have do pull into Excel. So really easy to take that data out, manipulate that any way you want. And from there, we can transition to the scheduled time report. So the scheduled time report, again, very similar. You can export all this data out, but really what's being captured here is any sort of scheduled time that's actually that's on your calendar, any sort of PTO that's been used, and that can all be trimmed down under your edit link here. I can expand all these sections. You can see, if I just wanted to pull the hours for the security details, I could check that. If I go under my time types and say, all right, just show me all of the overtime. I also do work with a lot of departments who do what I call exception reports, where you might average out your hours over a 28-day cycle, but they do get paid 40 every cycle. So really all that you care about for reporting purposes is, did they work overtime or did they take time off? So you just uncheck the regular time and you can get just the ones that are actually making adjustments to your reports. We also do have a summary report. It's going to track any sort of hours again, but it gives you more of a total number of hours. Now, wanted to make sure I showed you this report here too. This one's called a system log. What this will do is actually track every single action that's ever taken in our system. It really gives you a date and timestamp of when that action was taken, who took that action, what did they do, who it affected. More than enough information to look back and see who did what and when. This is going to exist for the life of your system. So you can always look back and find this information, especially for anyone who's coming from a spreadsheet. I'm sure you can imagine the extra accountability that this brings and really gives you that information so you can always look back on that. I also do have a required messaging feature here. So one of our last messaging tools I'm going to show you, just in the realm of accountability, I think this one's also very important. And this is one of those ones where just about everybody can find at least one use for this. So usually we can pull this example here and say, we have a new policy, and you're saying, please review section, a storage area. But you can't type when everybody's watching you. So you can add in that message and then you can send it out to whoever you'd like. So it can be a whole group, anything like that. But really the main benefit here is after you send out that message, the next time that person actually logs in, this is what they'll see. And the best part is I can click on whatever I want. I just want to put in a time off request. You can't. You have to review the message, check the box that says, I agree that I've read and understand this, and then hit continue. So that's them acknowledging your message. You then get a date and timestamp of when each person has acknowledged that or who hasn't. And that's all going to be documented and logged under your required messages here. But I did reference the new policy. So let's say you wanted them to read this new document and that's something that's just on your shared drive. But if you upload it into our storage area, that's where you can give them that cloud-based access so they can get to it from anywhere. So it's great for any sort of training material, things like that too. All right, so let's pop over to the help section here quick. Actually, we'll look at discussions briefly. So this is essentially where you can create any sort of discussion topics, and then people can make notes and have a documented thread of discussion in here. That one can be limited to just management if you so require. All right, and then lastly here is the help section. Lots of great training videos in here. Put a lot of work into these, and they are very good and up to date in terms of the different areas of our system. We also do have blog articles that we do write. So if you prefer written content over actual videos, we have a lot of those. We create those, of course, for any new features that we roll out to the system. But I did want to specifically point out the mobile videos that's going to walk you through how to actually set up our site on your phone. So that way you can check out that during your trial period. And then last but not least is our support contact information. So this is where you can see we are going to be primarily staffed Monday through Friday, 8 to 6 Central Time. That's the 888 number right here. We do also have an emergency contact line. So anything outside of those hours, we do have someone who monitors that line. And then we also do have an email. So a couple avenues to actually get a hold of support, but I cannot stress enough how important and how good those guys are at what they do, where you can call in and you don't have to listen to some terrible hold music. You don't have to sit in a queue. You'll get a live person on the phone right away who's ready to help you and is an expert in the system. So that is unlimited support for the life of your subscription. And especially if you have like a new admin, let's say your old scheduler just retired, have the new one give us a call. We'll train them up on how to use the system. But in terms of the general overview, there's obviously a lot more components to the system. Those are really the ones I wanted to make sure I showed you guys today. So I do appreciate everyone letting me walk you through all that. But let's open it up to some questions here. So if anyone does have any specific questions on, again, if I missed something or a specific scenario, I'm happy to go through any of those. All right, we'll just give that a quick moment. Okay, so I had first question here. It actually looks like someone had a question on the swap feature. So it was how do they regulate if it is only during a certain time frame that it has to be paid back, because they want to make sure that it doesn't generate additional overtime if it's outside of the pay period. So that's all going to be done within these work groups here. And the work groups are where we can say, all right, this particular group of people, they can only do shift swaps, and it has to be paid back within, let's just say, the same pay period or month or week, or really whatever you want to define there. And that's essentially going to have it so whenever you do see an actual trade that's ready to be approved, then it will, you'll know that it's within the parameters that you've set, and you don't have to double check that. Also, kind of in that regard, I think this is going to address another one of the questions I'm seeing now, is making sure that you are keeping people under a certain threshold of time. So that's what we use work limits for. So work limits, I can set it up so anyone, if you try to schedule them for more than 16 hours in a row or a certain number of hours in a time frame, this is mostly used for part-time groups, where I can say I don't want people working more than 36 in a week. Or I can say minimum time off. So if you do require that there's actually an 8-hour rest period in between your shifts, we can set that up too. All right, looks like we have a question on Jason here, thank you. It looks like are shifts able to be split up, divided, and if needed to cover a short shift? Definitely. So depending on what you actually want the shift to be, let's jump into our hourly editor here again. So we'll go into this particular day. So you've probably seen it a little bit here. There's this tool that's called block time. Block time is something that we use to really manipulate open time. So what is an open shift? It is whatever you want it to be. So let's say based on your schedule, you really only need, let's say from 6 to 10 covered. You're not worried about from 10 to 14. So I can actually just take this block time once that vacancy is created, and I can just slide that over. So now that open shift is just from 6 to 10. And also, for those who might split if you have a 12-hour shift and you usually split it up into 2 6-hour blocks, and maybe someone holds over and someone stays late, then when people go to sign up for these things, you can definitely split these up. So I can say, all right, Abel, you're going to cover the front half, and Perry, you're going to cover the back half of that. So again, it's all just a matter of how we actually design your schedule itself. All right. Does the system allow for time clock entry of employees to punch in? Great question. So we do have a time clock. I can actually turn that on really quick. So this is essentially our time clock here. And it is a web-based kiosk that looks something like this. So you can have this running just on any sort of machine. So you can authenticate particular computers and say that you're only able to punch in from this location. Or if you have people who do have take-home vehicles, a lot of people turn off that restriction, so you can just punch in from your phone. It's up to you. But you can have them so they can access this, select their name, type in their password, and then hit clock in or clock out. So that'll record those punches. It also, having that all built and integrated into your scheduling system, is we know when they should be working. So from here, this is where you can define a grace period. The grace period will it will make so if they ever try to punch in outside of that, more than 15 minutes earlier, more than 5 minutes late, the system will actually require them to type in a reason as to why, so they could justify that. Lots of times it is okay that they're doing that if they're, if it's a busy day or you had a call coming early, you can record that, and then that can essentially verify the additional overtime that might be generated based on that. But as an admin who manages these records, that's all going to be done right from your time clock hours tab here. And that's where you'll see these are all the hours on the left of when they should be working. And these are all the hours on the right here of when they actually did work. So let's say Frankie here, he forgot to clock in. So I can go and I can just clock him in for him. And then now I can see that he's currently clocked in for the day. All right. Quick question here on, do we have the ability to essentially integrate with like an external calendar, like a Google or Apple or Outlook calendar? And we definitely do. That is done on a per user basis though. It's not like the whole schedule pulls over there, but under the My Schedule tab, let's say Frankie wanted to hook this up to his family Google Calendar. I can go here, click on Share My Schedule, and I can select Get Link. And when I click that, it will generate a link here that I can select Google, Apple, Outlook, or any other calendar that actually has that functionality. And it will periodically pull the data from our system to that calendar. Of course, we encourage that if you want to check your schedule, you're always pulling up our system because that's what you can actually interact with, but it's good to kind of merge all those together for sure. All right. Give me one moment here, just reading this next question. Great question here, Edward. Thank you for that. Yes, we do have a feature that can limit what people are allowed to see. A lot of people use this if you do more of an availability system, which I didn't cover today, but we do have an availability system where you can have people enter that time in advance and you can build a schedule based on that. A little different than signups, but it's really something where you can more say, schedule me, I'm available these days if you need me. But that really does work in conjunction with our schedule publishing feature, is what I'm going to show you quick. So under our schedules tab in the setup area, I can go to each of my schedules, and let's say, let's actually do this for the security detail schedule. And what I can do is I can publish certain chunks of my schedule at different times. So let's say I only want to release it 2 weeks at a time and do that maybe a week and a half early, something like that. So we can have that automatically publishing itself, either through this automatic function. I can do a custom one to determine what the actual amount of days is, or you can just do it manually, where you can have it not automatic, and basically whenever you're done with it, then you can just come in here and check that button, and that will publish your next chunk of time out there. So I think the important part about that one too is you can do it per schedule. So if you do want them to see some items and not other items, then you can do that too. I got another quick question here, just a few more moments left for time in terms of it is common to have dispatch in your system with you, but one thing I can do is I can allow dispatch to see all the schedules, but I can also make it so your officers can't see dispatch. So the access levels are definitely a big piece to the system in terms of really regulating and managing what you're allowed to see and access within the program. All right, so that's about it that I have for time here today. I do want to thank everybody again for joining us, and as I'm walking you through the system, hopefully I answered a lot of your questions. I did want to point out that we do have some handouts on the GoToWebinar control panel. There's about 4 of them over there that will give you some good customer reports and items like that. So feel free to look at those. I will leave the session open here after I chime out here in just a few moments. So feel free to download those. But yeah, again, I hope I've really kind of explained the basic functions on how Aladtec can streamline a lot of your scheduling related tasks, your different communications, tracking overtime, some of those different items. And again, one of our system specialists and account executives would be happy to set you up a more in-depth customized demo that's unique to your agency. So feel free to give us a call. That's going to be at 888-749-5550, or you can always visit our website at www.aladtec.com for any sort of additional information or videos. But thank you everybody again, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
I can see that.